Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the show.
If you should awaken, I will be there when you wake from your lovely
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. Today we will be discussing chapter number 58, Rhythm, Vibration, and Polarity. These are very important chapters. A long time ago, before I decided to write a book, I talked to a friend of mine who was a biblicist, and he said what he liked most about the Bible was the fact that it taught him things that you can use in your everyday life. Well, I tried to put that same type of energy into my book, things that people can use. That's why I used the whole portion on Hermeticism, the 7 Hermetic principles. These are 3 of the Hermetic principles: rhythm, vibration, and polarity. I framed it so that we can learn about these principles within the context of Jesus Christ attending the mystery schools of Egypt, which is what I believe by my research he did. When he left home as a child, they went to Egypt. And this is what Jesus did while in Egypt. Now, what we're talking about here, when we're talking about rhythm, is we're talking about the way people move, the way people assume their energy, so to speak. It's like when a person moves and they have a anxious rhythm or a sort of a distorted rhythm, you can feel that. You can feel that if you're in a crowded room and somebody's acting that way, it kind of sets off a mood for the whole room, so to speak. I've been in situations where you would be in a crowd and there would be one person acting like that, and next thing you know, there's anxiety with all the entire source. So, rhythm is something that you want to be aware of as far as how you move. It kind of sets the tone for who you are. People are very impressionable. When I was young, I saw a movie called Shaft, and that kind of set off a chain reaction with me because I wanted to have the same type of same type of rhythm that Shaft had. I thought it was pretty cool. And also, a lot of people are going to leave impressions on you. The multitude of women who Marilyn Monroe left an impression on women, but very few women could duplicate that, so they just said forget it, and they chose someone else. However, we've had role models. Cleopatra was a role model. And so anyway, we've tried to move like these people. Now, once you establish the rhythm, the vibration comes with it. Now, vibration is something that you can't see, but your spirit can pick up on the vibrant rate of other people. If you're around somebody and their vibrant rate is different than your own, you can feel that. That person will make you feel uncomfortable, just like somebody with a vibrant rate that's closer to yours will make you feel comfortable. This is what this whole thing is about. The last part is polarity. Polarity is the one I call the Jesus principle. That's the one that basically says that Jesus treated everyone equally. Everyone was equal, good, bad, or indifferent. His demeanor, the way he approached all people was the same way. I've owned group homes for developmentally disabled adults. Now, in those group homes, it doesn't matter what the affliction, so-called affliction of the person is there, you treat them the same way with dignity and respect, the same way you would want to be treated, because they're actually in a situation where they may not be able to help themselves. So if they can't help themselves, and you don't want to be in a situation who will discriminate against them because they can't help themselves. Now, the same thing applies to quote unquote average humans. There are human beings who are maladapted for all kinds of reasons. It could be because of cultural abuse. It could be because abuse from people and others in their present life. And the thing about it is, you need to treat those people the same way as well. Sometimes you have to use a little avoidance behavior and stand back a little bit. But for the most part, you treat everybody with dignity and respect. If you want to be kind of like Jesus. As far as being like Jesus is, just do the best you can with that one. That's why he was Jesus, because he had the ability to treat all people, even those who were about to hang him, with a level of respect and say, hey, the principle of polarity, it simply means that there's no such thing as hot or cold. It's just temperature. There's no such thing as right, wrong. It's just opinions. No such thing as good and evil. It's just behaviors. If you can adopt that, if you can be like that, then you too could be like Jesus. And of course, I say that facetiously because that is really a bar too high. It's a bar too high. If you can get to where you can halfway treat people with bad behaviors like they're just behaviors, in a group home, it's business. You're going to learn how to do that because you have to. They'll shut you down if you don't. But at the same time, you'll understand that if it's not really their fault, then there's no sense in you acting in that kind of negative fashion because of it. So now here we are. We will be learning and working on that principle of polarity for a while. Oh wait, I'd like to introduce the next chapter before I forget. Chapter 58, Rhythm, Vibration, and Polarity.
Chapter 58, Rhythm, Vibration, and Polarity.
The next class at the school was held 3 days later, giving the students plenty of time to spend with family and friends visiting the many sites on the Egyptian plateau. All were in place and ready to go when the priest called the roll. Then two of the priests walked into the room, speaking again in unison, saying that,
In the beginning, there was the All-Only. After a time, it became lonely. What was needed then was companionship. This creation would not be necessary if there was nothing or no one to share it with.
This too would be the dilemma of all that is created unless its motivation is this.
It then created a counterpart.
This counterpart would be defined as a gender accompaniment.
This supplementary second must differ in ways that would enrich the two if they were in proximity. Similar yet different, alike yet opposite. Contrary to the emotional or emotionless other. A yin to a yang, if you will. A concept of dualism that may complement the otherwise single entity.
Have you been drinking?
it was like magic the way the priest walked and spoke together. Yeshua felt that he need only to know enough to stay 1 or 2 steps behind his most wonderful tutor. The priest went on to explain.
A counterpart to
the all would define its gender.
If nature had been a male, then the all would have been a feminine. Since nature is the mother of creation, then the all is a male. With the creation of their counterpart,
the need thereof of a method to attract was created.
The method was rhythm.
A thing will always notice a thing when there are similarities. Just to notice oneself in another is fascinating to a thing.
The curiosity alone is overwhelming, and an investigation of a thing becomes difficult to resist. Also, there is a vibration. Vibration is a measurable movement within the structure caused by the instability of the structure. However, vibration also occurs as a natural response to the emotional level of the object.
All things that have life in the universe has a vibrant ray.
This vibrant ray is increased or decreased by the electromagnetic pulse of the object. In the beginning,
this may be seen as an aura,
or a distant atmospheric quality generated by something in nature,
A
or
light
residue.
The priest then recommended a break for lunch or just to let the students relax for a while. Yeshua found it very hard to keep his mind on subject. He seemed to wander off into a place of great calm, as the voices of the priest would soothe him. He wondered if it was to be his destiny to be a priest. Soon he would find that destiny for him was as the messenger of a nation. After the break, priest warned the students of the somewhat difficult subject yet to be had. This was the subject of polarity. Yeshua was not at all excited to learn about yet another word he had never in his short life heard. The priest went on to describe this subject as the subject of judgment. They explained,
One cannot be a fair judge if one has little knowledge.
and or background of the entire subject.
"We must use the example of temperature," said the priest. He then asked the class, under what circumstance could cold purely exist?
Yeshua, do you have an answer?
Yeshua searched deeply into his thoughts to find a suitable response. He did not want to disappoint the priest yet again,
when the cold is in your mind, because the universe is mental,
replied Yeshua in a very reluctant voice. All three priests responded yet again in unison, asking Yeshua,
how often do you see your tutor?
As Yeshua sunk just a little deeper into his chair, that was made of stalks from sugarcane and bamboo. He sank so low into it that he could smell the sweetness of it. To Yeshua's delight, no other student had an answer to the question. Just then Yeshua remembered the time when his mother told him that he could not bake cake if he did not have heat. And without hesitation Yeshua raised his hand.
When it doesn't have heat?
All three priests stood up at the same time to congratulate Yeshua on his most brilliant answer, as the whole class raised to their feet to pat Yeshua on the back in exultation. Like a great epiphany, Yeshua began to speak. It was the most amazing example of studentry ever as he began to express his thoughts.
It is like darkness without light.
Yes!
It is like evil without goodness. It is like the color black with no white, or hate without love.
Yes, Yeshua, you are on fire.
Said one of the priests.
It is like burning without fire. Put her outer,
Said Yeshua.
Well,
Said the priest.
sort of.
The priest then began to explain the principle in great detail.
Polarity is the principle when all possibilities are considered. Right exists when wrong is not present. Perfect health exists when contrary is not present.
So you can never be completely wrong, because there is no such thing as right and its absolute. You are never completely dry, unless there is no part that is wet. Everything in the universe has its opposing pole.
Stellar bodies have poles of opposite sides. One hand is the exact opposite of the other. Even the face is in balance.
At least under
Normal circumstances. The
The
eyes work together to complete the projected image that appears from your particular point of view.
Yeah.
Since polarity exists in all things,
Attraction cannot be a law, but merely an opinion. A particular state of mind, perhaps even by pheromones.
in most cases
it is the opposite that is most attracting. The curiosity of that which is attracted to you by vibration and rhythm.
Subscribe and push the like button.
Now, I'd like to get to something else. Another part of our teaching here that's very disturbing, actually, and that is the one about abuse, especially when it comes to children. Now, we have a situation here that, biblically speaking, dealing with the scripture that talks about he who spares the rod spoils the child. Now let's examine that. I once talked to a minister and he said that the scripture meant that spoil the rod, meaning you had a herd of sheep and it's your duty to guide these sheep. And he explained to me that the way the shepherd was taught, he was not only taught how to guide, but he was also given instructions on how to injure the sheep. You take the stick and you hit the sheep on the back leg and break it. Once it is broken, you are trained as a shepherd on how to mend that broken leg so that the sheep will behave like you want it to. This is absolutely ridiculous. This goes back to not only some sheep and a staff, but it goes to slavery as well. What it's telling you is that by your own ignorance, you are unable to figure out how to deal with individuals, so you go back to your most primal nature, and you just want to beat the hell out of it. When it comes to children are a very hard thing to understand because they're constantly learning and constantly changing. What they will learn from you, some of you parents, is that a big person with a bigger stick has an advantage over a little bitty person without a stick. And basically, we are supposed to just accept that as normal behavior. Well, it is not. It is not normal behavior for you to beat your children because first of all, I'm a 66-year-old man, and I never did, and I have 3 boys and own group homes. I have never beat my children. So I know that beating kids is a negative thing perpetrated by narrow-minded people. And you could only blame yourself. You can't blame it on generational teachings, because if that was the case, I would have beat my children, but I never had to. I can't even remember really getting mad at my boys. I got mad at one of them one time, but that was just for a second. You know, if you love somebody, you don't even have to get mad at them, you know. And so it's not from generation to generation, because if my father was that way, well, that curse has been stopped with me. And I'm sure that my children will not do that. I remember when I was a child and my father, if your parent is beating you, all it really makes you want to do is go out into the world and feel like you have the authority to beat up somebody too. If you want to know where bullies come from, they probably come from people, little babies, who were bullied. And so basically, and I knew as a child when all this was happening to me, it wasn't going to do me any good as far as being bad or not. No, it was just going to teach me how to be slicker next time, and especially the comical side where your father or something would beat you and he thought he was hitting skin, but he wasn't. He was hitting all the padding that you would put on underneath. Yeah, well, and trust me, that don't work either, because that doesn't work. But anyway, my point being, it is child abuse, and it's a generational kind of curse, because we believe people who do that use their parents doing it as some excuse. Stop it. That's not an excuse. It just means that you are as narrow-minded as your parents were at the time. There's no excuse for beating your children. There is just none. I know it's quicker. It gets the job done better. It's easier for you to go berserk than to sit down and try to get your children to understand something. I understand that. It gets the job done. Not really. Because what they're going to do is they're going to take this violence that you just taught them into the streets. And don't give me this as a black person, that's just how we roll. Yeah, that's how we roll, and we know where we learned it from. So it is also a learned behavior that has been set down for hundreds of years. We have to stop this generational curse of beating and abusing our children. However, I'm here to talk about an abuse that is 100 times worse than that. And that is where you go into the Bible and it tells you that a God who loves you and created you will put you in a place called hell that he has created. I don't know if human civilization will ever survive if they can accept that as any kind of gospel. I, for instance, cannot. I remember the pastor, Carlton Pearson. He said that God spoke to him and told him there was no such thing as hell. And they kicked him out of the church. A committee kicked him out of the church because God told him there was no such thing as hell. When I say the purpose of being spiritual is to connect with God so he can tell you something. So these negative individuals who decided that he should get kicked out are basically people who are basically, in my opinion, infected with the negativity that is within the Bible. It doesn't do you any good to talk about how much God loves you, because how much does he love something that he will allow to burn in hell? I have seen parents say to their children, that if you go to hell, it's your own fault because I warned you. I've got 3 boys. If God sent my 3 boys to hell, they're not going without me, because I'm going to go with them. I'm not going to send my children to hell by themselves. I'm their protector. If I got to protect them in hell and all that well, that's just what it's going to have to be, because I love them that much. If you can allow your children to go to hell and you not think twice about it, that just means you don't care about them as much as you should. And that's really not the sad part. It's not the sad part that you would do something like that, but the sad part is that it's in the Bible and these people made you believe it because it's not true in the first place. There is a part of God, the creator of the universe, in everyone. If he's sending people to hell, he's sending himself to hell. I cannot accept that. If he's sending himself to hell, because he is within everybody, everyone. So when I'm talking about child abuse, what I'm talking about is also elder abuse, senior, any kind of abuse where a religious person will threaten somebody with damnation and burning in hell. I believe you ministers ought to be ashamed of yourselves, because I don't think you are connected to the Creator, because if you were, you'd be like Carlton Pearson and he'd tell you to cut that foolishness out. Threatening people. I know a bishop now, every time he turns around, he's talking about, you don't have to believe in hell if you don't want to. You're going to find out. Who are you to tell me? You're nobody to tell me. You're not going to convince me there's a hell because you was simple-minded enough to believe it. This is just ridiculous. We need to cut this out. That's why you have atheists in the world, because they know that is the craziest thing in the world, and they don't want to worship a God that would do that. Well, I'm telling you, atheists, that's not the Creator. The devil made that one up because basically it fits his profile. How else would you what better way to destroy a religion than to tell them some crap like that and let them believe it? So they can believe that most of the people in the world are going to go to, and you know what? This whole go to hell thing. Let me tell you how dumb it is. I had a person tell me that was into the Bible that the reason black people were slaves was because of the sin of Eve. If Eve hadn't eaten that fruit, then black people wouldn't go to prison, wouldn't have been slaves. We have to be better than that. We are supposed to be evolving upward, not de-evolving. As long as you believe that this is what the Bible is saying, human beings are de-evolving. Satan, Lucifer, is the one that wants people to de-evolve. That's not anything worthy of the creator of the universe. You call him loving in one place, you're not loving if you will burn your creations in the pit of hell. Born again Christians. Born again Christians seem to be okay with the notion, since they're the ones that get to go to heaven and you get to go to hell, which makes you just as bad as the devil. How are you going to sit up here and accept the fact that you're going to heaven and everybody else is going to hell? You ought to be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself. You need to be, you know how you had you had racism, and white supremacy in America, and then you had a wonderful person like Martin Luther King move a civil rights movement. Well, you need to have a civil rights movement so people don't have to go to hell. How can you have a problem with slavery and not have a problem with people going to hell and burning in hell? You need to be protesting God if that were the case. Why would you protest slavery and not protest you're going to burn your ass up in hell for eternity? If it were true, we would need to go take that up with the Creator. I'm telling you it's not true. So the Creator's not like that. The Creator of the universe doesn't put people in hell. That's just a made-up story with the biblical gods who were not the Creator of the universe. That's the only way it would make sense. People, if you are to evolve, you need to rethink this heaven and go to hell thing. If you want to stay like you are, if you want to keep having wars and keep doing all this thing, you're welcome to. There's nothing I can do about it if that's what you prefer. If you prefer that, there's nothing I can do. But at least I will have left my opinion out into the ether. Please join me for another show so you can watch me be bothered by something else, if nothing else. I love everybody. See you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.